So Canada's Women's XNT just finished her Olympic send-off series and beat Mexico, then drew Mexico. So what does that mean? Well, to me, let's talk about it. So guys, welcome back to the Africans again. We do our, Canadian African content because it'll be the Africans weekly. So this is what we're gonna call our reactions now. So what does it mean? Because there's a degree where we can react and we can look at things, but what does it mean, at least to me? And this could be whatever things, but let's get into the conversation, guys. If you haven't already, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, turn on notifications if you like this type of content, or just let us know how we can make it better. Always up for suggestions. What did we learn? So what does it mean? What does it mean to beat a team and draw a team? The first thing is acknowledge who you've played. Mexico's aside, they're coming. I remember after Gold Cup W, people saw the U.S. lose to Mexico and said, "Who is Mexico on their way?" I remember the conversation we had after the World Cup qualifiers, the CONCACAF W Championships, where I remember the question I asked was, "Who is now the third best team in CONCACAF on the women's side?" Because you had the USA, you had Canada, and we were all kind of wondering who that third team would be. Mexico hosting CONCACAF W, we figured, it'd be them. They're coming through. They didn't get out of the groups. Costa Rica was a solid side. Jamaica looked like it was building off its last World Cup qualifiers. So it looked like, we good. And then Haiti had moments but didn't come through. And then Panama ultimately making the World Cup but weren't able to. But I think Mexico more comfortably are closer to that third spot in women's football in CONCACAF than I think before. Again, anytime you get close to that, I am a consistency merchant, so I want to see them now consistently be at that level. It's one thing to beat the lower levels, but can you now compete with the higher teams in the region? And I think Mexico is showing a consistency to do that. We want to see a little bit more, but they're showing an ability to do so. So I do think they have the opportunity to truly look good on that end. So that's the first thing. So what does it mean? First thing, acknowledge that Mexico is coming. They are coming. Looking at the roster for the Olympics, what does it mean? I think it's a good conversation to have in terms of how does Bev break down. Now, there's two trains of thought. There's what we are pretty much knowing what Bev will do versus what she should do. What we assume she will do is she will look at her roster, at least for me, and she's going to take the players that she's familiar with and bring them in. What that means is players like Michelle Prince, players like maybe a Deanne Rose next weekend because familiarity, and a player like Quinn. Now, two of those players I can see making the squad. I think Deanne Rose may be a little bit further off than we think. But when it comes to Prince and Quinn, they're the players that she knows, Bev knows, but I would caution versus her bringing them, not because they aren't quality, but because I have the PTSD of the World Cup, where we brought players that were familiar, who could play the system, but then ultimately we weren't able to get more than maybe 20 to 30 minutes out of all those players in 3 games, as Canada failed to make it out of the group stage. And so, to me, that PTSD is real. I do wonder if she will go that route. Now, does that mean then who are your options moving in and out? I think it's a good question. Who would you replace Michelle Prince with up top? I think it's a conversation where I think you have to have an Olivia Smith if Michelle Prince isn't coming. It gets more interesting if you don't have Quinn, as you don't have that CDM, because some might say, okay, well, it's Desiree Scott, clearly. I may not go Desiree, I might look for, say, maybe an Emma Reagan who did play well in her cameo and has played well when there was no Quinn in the lineup. Again, if Quinn is healthy, I think they're coming. That's not even a question. They will be there. However, I think the timeline for them is right before the World Cup, not the World Cup, the Olympics, and I think that's my concern. I would rather, my preference would be, I'd rather have players who are playing and are fit at that point, match sharpness, because you only have 18 players to rotate. Yes, you can bring some alternates, but you have 18 players, and if you are already starting with 16, for me, I'd rather come with 18 healthy and in form, regardless of the level, versus 18 to 22 that you're familiar with, and maybe 3 or 4 aren't fit. We kind of mentioned a lot of those things there, but the midfield battle will be interesting. So, like, Julie Grosso, do we feel good about her? I think when her move comes out will really affect a lot. I think the transition time in between is gonna suck for her, because you'd like to see her. I think she is one of Bev's players that she can rely on and has her trust. So I think she'll make it either as a starting player or possibly an alternate. But Grosso, it's not even Grosso's demise, but I think the emergence of Simi Awujo has made Julia Grosso a little bit from player who was playing to outside looking in. And I think that's the reality of the game, right? You're going to have new players coming in, new players fighting, and it's about maintaining the form and going. You want competition at your top level, ultimately, and I think if you can't do that, what do you do? It sucks. Lastly, just from a personal, so like I was at the game in Toronto, good atmosphere. Tuesday evening game isn't terrible. It depends who you're trying to grab. I know it was 18,000 there. It was a good environment. I think we still need to work on the best timing for those games. I remember some of the families I was with on the train back in talking about, well, this would have been a lot easier on, say, a weekend, and maybe it could have been. Maybe if it's on the weekend, they sell out. But you're continuing to see the numbers to grow for women's soccer. And again, give the fans the opportunity to see them, and I think they'll be happy to see them go through. So, like, what does this all mean? I think Canada looks good. They do have questions walking into the Olympics, but I think the questions have answerable answers, and I like what I see. You guys let me know. So, like, what does this mean to you? And we'll wrap it up right here.